just happened to you?
I just fell down the stairs.
Did you hurt yourself?
Yeah, I have a very dodgy ankle and it gives way at the most inappropriate moments, unfortunately. It happened in Tottenham Hale once in this massive gang of like all these rude boy kids, and I was coming home and I just was walking by them and I just went like that and just fell into all of them. I just was on the floor holding my ankle, and these sort of kids who probably, they look like they'd mug the crap out of you. They were just standing around looking at me and they were like, oh, you better get up, it's pretty bad around here. I was just like, oh fuck. They're alright actually, they like lifted me up.
Are you okay?
Oh yeah, I'm cool. Yeah, it's okay. I need to do exercise for it, but
like this?
Yeah, I'm meant to do this thing where like I put the other foot there and I push for ages against it to build up the ligaments around here. But I just don't.
But you're a skater, right?
Yeah, that's how it happened. Yeah. Hello, I'm Christopher Robin, and we are in Soho at 2 Floors, and this is part 1 of a 3-part exhibition, and this is the first exhibition of my pictures. This picture is the first picture I ever painted on a canvas. Before that, I've always been a painter, but painting murals or clothes or anything myself. I'd been a painter for a while, and suddenly someone I knew I was after a lot of frames. I can't even remember why I wanted them now, but a relative of theirs had died who was also a painter, and through that I sort of inherited a lot of canvases, and suddenly sort of felt like, well, I should start painting them. So I started with this, which was originally a sort of just started awful wedding painting, and got that all off and started creating this, which is basically inspired by 3D holograms. Three-dimensional image is built up, and I just wanted something like that, but with all the polys to be a different color to create something really sort of bold and be able to get a real dimensionality to it. I can't remember starting painting really. I guess probably the first, I was taught to paint when I was about, I guess, 11 or 12. And my mum sent me off to one of her friends who was a painter as well, who's a Royal College of Art graduate, and she's a fantastic painter, award-winning painter. And she started teaching me how to paint, and initially it was all watercolor and very strict representational work, and that's sort of where it started really. But in terms of being a painter, that's only really started recently. For me, that's what I think. That's what I thought anyway. It's only when I've spoken to other people and they're like, oh no, you've always been a painter, and it's kind of odd. Painting on my face or painting on anything has just been this habit that always happened. I was a kid and loved drawing on myself, and then at school I used to draw patterns all the way up my arms, and just was obsessed by it. Tried to work with tattooists who wouldn't have me, and just thought I was some stupid kid. And then I was obsessed by getting this face tattoo about 8 years ago, and started drawing on my face every day the same thing to see if a year went by and what the reactions were and if it would be a good thing to do. And I had this girlfriend who just went nuts because I was using heavy marker pens and all kinds of stupid, really bad for your skin things on my face. I remember once I did this thing with screen printing ink, which was just all over my face, and I had to get it off with white spirit, and white spirit on your eyes, and I did a lot of stupid shit. The main thing with doing the pictures, one of the pivotal points was meeting a friend of mine, a great friend of mine now, a guy called Blue, whose family are all artists, and he really sort of opened up the idea of being an artist to me. And before that, even though I was a muralist before and was making clothes and all sorts of stuff, never really saw anything other than it was just what I did because I always did it and I couldn't stop doing it, but it wasn't anything like this is a career, and it still isn't really. It's just what I do, and I can't stop doing it, but that's the way it goes. And it was meetings with his dad and his uncle, and his dad was just like, well, you've always been painting, you've always been a painter. And I didn't really thought about it like that. I just sort of thought, oh, really? I guess I always have been. So now I'm doing it on campuses, a bit more serious. I had to sort of split it up into 3 exhibitions so that it would create a sort of narrative that people could understand in a way and make my work palatable. That's why I've broken it up like this. I've got a lot of pieces that I could show, and if I put everything together in a year, it would all be so different, totally different styles, different looks, and it's not really what you expect from a painter. There's always like, most painters to me seem like they're stylists, and they choose a style and they just run with that style and they alter the style, where, because I just do everything depending on what I think or what I feel is important. One day I might be really negative, or, well, not just one day, I might be negative for like a month, and I'm like, I want to produce this really like, sort of, in a way, sort of negative work. And so if you get a year's work together and block it by time and when it was produced, it's always expressing like this range of emotions instead of like a concise thing with different styles. And I thought, there's no way people are really gonna, if I showed this, it's just gonna be confusing to people. So to break it up into 3 different blocks was what I felt was probably the best and easiest thing to do. So right now we're in The Good. I decided to choose like a pretty cheesy name for it and stole the classic film title, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, to give a sort of basic sort of feel to overall what the work I feel is. It's sort of like a proposal, I guess. It's sort of, all this work I feel has some sort of merit that relates to goodness. As in that, if you say anything's good, you're putting yourself up for criticism. Everyone loves that, so that's part of it too. And it's very aesthetic, especially this first half. Okay, well, what I did with this is originally started off by priming the canvases in a pattern. If you see the reflections, you can see these different lines on the gloss, and that's how the canvases were originally positioned. So you can set it. It's basically like a puzzle. It's a visual Sudoku, and you can work out its construction. The idea is every color was built up in blocks of sets in patterns. So I might have a color that runs across the bottom that doesn't run across the top, or generally in sets of 4. So some colors appear here, 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 and here, or maybe just on those 4 and not on those 4. And each one goes up incrementally in primes. So you've got, how was it? Well, I could actually just look. It was made 2 years ago. Just give me a second. Yep, okay. So this one is, yep, it's primes. So this one has 30 numbers on, this one has 17 numbers, this one will probably have 21 colors, no, 19 colors, 23 colors.
So you've documented how many colors?
Is each on the back I've documented how many colors are on it, and then also on the back you can sort of see how I marked out how it should be made, and then and so you can sort of work out a bit of how they're constructed. Originally what I needed was something, what I wanted was something small that I could give out to a lot of people, because at the time I just thought, what am I going to do with all this stuff? It just piles up and becomes like, this sort of dead weight. I thought it'd be nice to do something that was a set that would just disperse and then would come together as a set if anyone ever wanted to put them together again, and you could sort of work out how it's constructed. And the idea was to be able to have a single painting like this, which has a different sort of color range to, for instance, like that, and if you just had these two, they would be kind of quite different, but together they sort of work together to look like the same sort of colors go across them, but they actually don't. They all sort of contain their own sort of individual colors. Usually, if they're, for instance, like the pink here comes across this, and this, and like the purple, this is all just on these ones, I imagine. Yep, there, and yep, there, and which isn't on here. And the silver, these two are silver, these two have silver on them. Everything was built up in patterns, and then I sort of mixed it up and then did more patterns for it. And the idea is you have this sort of, this whole that's sort of constructed into a maths game, really. So the idea behind this is like a development from some of the mural work I did, which was very loose, very large, floral compositions. So the idea was that if it's sort of like a zoom in the center of an abstract flower, and I wanted to create it as a satisfying visual whole. And the way I achieved that, I feel, is through basically proportions. There's a little, like, this is the centerpiece here, and then to highlight that you have this circle of navy which comes around here, and then you've got these little touches of turquoise which come up here, and between this space here and this space coming down here, it's about 50-50. It's like proportional from one side to the other. So it's trying to create something that looks loose and quick, but works in a sort of solid way through proportions and geometry. It's a very heavy gloss finish with solid blocks of layers and layers of paint to have this sort of floating feeling. So the color floats on top of this very sheeny surface to give that nice liquidy feeling. Like it could be moving, but sort of, you got it right at the solid time. We could talk about this one now. This is a year after all this and was in the midst of a lot of very, very different work. But I wanted to do something which had the same sort of feeling as the first painting that I'd created, but had a very painterly solution, and I'd really got into textures and not so flat and not so solid, and much more appreciative of details. So I created this sort of looser red, much sort of more emotional, I feel, painting version of what I'd already been interested in, and mixed a lot of other sort of chaos when I was doing it. The thing about this type of work is, in real life they're objects, but most people see stuff photographed, and the moment something's photographed, especially a painting, it just takes away from that painting totally, because a photograph flattens things. A painting's a real thing, but a photograph's often just an impression of that real thing, and it kind of takes away from a lot of things, especially this type of work, which is so graphic-y. So a photo of this would be very flat, where in reality it's very textural, and it's a totally different type of object. So these are all very like graphic, and especially when they're photographed, but in reality they're not. And I wanted to get away from that and have something that was very painterly and really embraced what paint can do. So we've got two proposals in The Good, and one's beauty through maths, and sort of ways of seeing things in terms of, like, heavily influenced by computers and the way computers create three-dimensional objects or graphic imagery. Like, that's probably where I try and take ideas a lot of the time from contemporary technology. That's sort of, especially all that work, that's what that was about.
But this work is the opposite.
Kind of, but similar. There's it depends. We'll start with this, which is sort of the opposite. That is a total tribute painting. In fact, it's a bit like well, it isn't really. Basically what I've done here is I took a early Kandinsky painting, and this is a Kandinsky tribute. So what I've got is the Blue Rider painting, where they supposedly took the name for the Blue Rider group with Mackie and Gabriel Munter and all that lot. and I made it this tribute to the rest of the ideas that he comes along. So you've got this character who is obviously not Kandinsky, but for me that's representative of him, and he's riding through all the influences that come throughout his work. So you've got these great like futurist lines, and the background starts becoming much more geometric as the futurist influence comes in, and this is all like in some of his work. And you've got this sort of tree which is really like Gabriel Munter's stuff, his lover, and as it goes on it just gets looser into the very loose abstract, and you've got this sort of object here which looks sort of like a sun but isn't, because the light's coming from a different direction, and it's basically like the potential of the beginning point to where he's going. And this is all very traditional sort of Russian folk painting-y, which is what he loved, which is very his stuff, and then just sort of expanding, and that's the whole idea. And you've got these lines coming up that show that he's sort of going on into the future of his work. I love Kandinsky. Loads of like abstract expressionists already built on, or sort of abstract art really built on what he did, but for him it was like really hard to know if he was doing the right thing to do this, I feel, where he made a lot of other artists' lives a lot easier after him, I feel. Although there were loads of amazing avant-garde artists and avant-garde movements around the same time as when he was working, so it was a great time to be doing it. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, so I thought I'd put that in a little picture.
What are you doing?
I just do a little. I can do. This is cool. The pen will do. I just write. Okay. Okay, I'll just do it. Thank you. Okay. This is basically the idea was. I just thought. Okay, if you take Seurat and all the pointillists and Impressionism and how it's all about this sort of new understanding of the way we see and trying to capture that in paintings in terms of moving light, or with Seurat with like pixels and having like lots, an image is made up of lots of little dots. And I just thought, well, now we have a pretty good understanding of how our eyes work, and effectively you've got the eye, like the old science. Let's take it a bit more. An arch, and obviously the information. Ooh, damn it, pen's not working. Anyway, basically you have the information that comes in the eye, and then it comes out the opposite way, doesn't it? So it flips it, and then our brain flips it round for us. So the idea with this picture was that I basically wanted to create a picture which was influenced by the way we know we see now. So you have an upside down picture, and everything works with a blur to a focal point, because we have a focal point of around the size of our thumb outstretched, apparently. Yeah. So you have the tree, you have the eye, and then you have the tree.
Tattoo of the day.
Tattoo of the day. Effectively, this is just a tribute to that knowledge, really. The clue's in the name, mindlessly staring at a village in France, and the idea is, without the brain, you've just got the eye, and the eye is this focal point to a blur upside down, and that's what it gives you. So the idea is taking the tradition of painting the way we feel we see, and now it's painting the way we know we see, and producing a little tribute to that bit of information. So that was the concept with this piece. The other one behind me, the idea with this was that every time in London you have an exhibition, especially all these big blockbusters, like for instance Gauguin just been at the Tate Modern, biggest exhibition they've ever had at the Tate Modern. Advertised, you get these paintings which are about this size, and they're blown up to these like billboards, like enormous things, and they become this totally different thing from what they were in the first place. So the idea was to take something that you would normally see as a small picture of this little bit of a sort of still life going on, and just zoom it, but zoom it in its production. So you've got these very large sweeping brush strokes. So it's basically influenced from constantly seeing blown up old paintings. So I've got this sort of 50s style of picture, but then just presented in a way that we see pictures advertising painters nowadays. I combined all this work with that theme behind them. They're all things that I think are good. But goodness is always criticised, and especially anything that professes to be good. So it's very easy to criticise the work. But, you know, I think it's okay. It usually works on two levels. That's the idea. That you can anyone can enjoy it. That's the key. You don't have to be, you don't have to be this massively well-read, or there's not like some little pun in there, or it's not referencing something that if you haven't seen, you don't get the next piece. You can just appreciate it for what it is, or you can look at it and think about it, and there's a bit more. So that's what I feel is that's a good thing. That's a good thing for paintings to do. So I thought I'd bracket them all under the good.